Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm both kind of excited and a little bit sad today because I know this is going to be a great session, as were the first two. But I'm also sad because, Joyce, I've really enjoyed working with you on this, not only the last 3 weeks, but a few weeks before that planning. So thanks for all of your time and patience in dealing with me.
My pleasure, and I feel the same.
Yeah, so, but, I'm very confident. It's rare that I get as many messages and texts about how great a particular program was. So I know our members are learning from it. So while people are coming in, I'm going to walk through a few housekeeping items. First of all, actually, this is the first time I don't have to say it, but I will anyway. Just, please turn off your cameras and microphones. If you have any questions, you can enter them in the chat area. If they're not personal in nature, you should put them there, and that might stimulate some other questions. However, given this topic, they might be. So if you want to direct message them to me, I promise not to be judgmental about them, and I will get them over to Joyce. Also, as a member of the CFO Leadership Council, you can earn 1 unit of CPE for this program. One thing you have to do, you have to be on for the entirety of the program. We'll give you a minute or two grace period on both ends. But during the course of the program, there will be 4 polling questions. So to earn CPE, I will ask you you will need to complete the polling questions. However, they're not just random polling questions. They're actually very insightful and useful, and Joyce plans to address them during the course of her presentation. So whether you need CP or not, it would be terrific if you could answer those questions. As I said a moment ago, this is a third of a 3-part series on mental wellness with Joyce Matter. We've gotten some fantastic reviews, and I know today will be no exception. Joyce has a lot of accomplishments, too many to read right now, but just a little bit on her. She's the author of The Financial Mindset Fix, which explores the relationship between mental health and financial wealth. It's a great book. Here's a copy. I have sent all of you who registered an electronic copy of it. If you didn't get that, just send me an email. I know they seem to be getting stuck in spam. But a funny thing, Joyce actually didn't know this until I pointed it out to her, but she actually made the bestseller list on Amazon in 2 different categories. And she's so humble, that's not even something that she would look for. But that was a pretty impressive accomplishment. With that said, Joyce, I think I'm just going to turn off my microphone and turn things over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jack, for the kind introduction. And hi, everyone. Good to see you again. Maybe some of you attended some of our previous sessions. This is part 3 of the psychology of success. And we are talking about the connection between mental health and financial wealth. So just a reminder to mute yourselves if you are not speaking right now. That would be great so that we don't have any background noise. And I have a landing page for you again. So I'm going to pop that in the chat right now. And this landing page will give you copies of the slides. It also has a link to some of the handouts that I'm going to discuss today, as well as a link to my Psychology Today blog, which is on mental wealth, the connection between mental health and financial health. And it also has a discount for my new digital course, as well as my coaching services. So you'll want to be sure to download that landing page, or access it rather. So this presentation is my favorite because it is based on the premise of my book, as Jack said, The Financial Mindset Fix. And I'm so grateful to the CFO Leadership Council for purchasing it all for you through Kindle, and I hope that you enjoy it. I can't wait to hear what you think about it. But this book is really based on what I learned in my 25 years as a psychotherapist and as an entrepreneur. You might remember that I built and sold a private practice in Chicago that's now a national company, and I learned a tremendous amount about the psychology of money. So early on in my practice, I noticed something really curious. As my clients started to make progress in therapy, they started to earn more money. Client after client was coming in and they were reporting raises and promotions, starting their own businesses or side hustle. And I was very curious about it because we weren't even talking about money in their sessions. They were coming in with presenting issues like depression, anxiety, relationship issues, stress, or grief and loss. And I was curious, why were they all making more money? And how could I do the same? And I realized that it's because in therapy, we're always working on our underlying self-worth or self-esteem. And when we feel better about ourselves, we put ourselves out in the world with more confidence and more assertiveness, and we're willing to expand our comfort zones and take risks and try new things. And we're also willing to negotiate, to advocate for ourselves financially. So I became really interested in this connection between self-worth and net worth. And I wasn't the only person to notice this powerful trend. Author Susie Orman said she is not a financial planner and she is a financial planner, of course, not a psychiatrist. She knows that net worth will rise to meet your self-worth only if your self-worth rises to accept what can be yours. And this is something that I have seen so powerfully across clients. I've been working with working professionals across many different industries, advanced degreed professionals, and as our self-worth rises, we can really embrace that and create a more abundant life. So as I move through this presentation, you can think about your own psychology of money. You can also think about the people that you work with. If you're a CFO, maybe your CFO has some tricky psychology of money, and perhaps this presentation will help you better understand them and try to communicate with them to make the healthiest decisions for the organization. You can also think about it in terms of your partners. I have a lot of people who are working my program and my book or my digital course with their partner because, of course, communication around finances is one of the main reasons that couples seek therapy. And unfortunately, it's also one of the primary reasons for divorce. So when I talk about the psychology of money, I'm talking again about your feelings of worth, your feelings of deservingness for greater prosperity. I'm also asking you to think about your thoughts about money. What were your family's belief systems about money? What were you taught in your culture, in your family system, in your religious teachings about what money means? And how has that shaped your financial reality for better or for worse? Also, what are your emotions around money? How do you respond? Are you confident? Are you, feeling great about your finances? Or are you like many people who have some shame or some overwhelm or anxiety? And what are your behaviors around money? Do you have obsessive compulsive behaviors around money? Are they healthy behaviors? You might know people who have addictive or compulsive behaviors when it comes to spending. And also, what is your relationship with money? And what is your financial relationship with others? That's a huge one in terms of your financial boundaries, whether it's in your partnership, with your extended family, even with your own children, and even with your employer. How do you set financial limits and boundaries, or how don't you? And how might that be hurting your financial reality? So I'm letting you in on a little secret that we therapists often specialize in our own issues. So I specialize in the psychology of money and financial anxiety. And I'm going to share with you my financial story. This is a picture of me. My hair used to be naturally curly. Now I need the Dyson hair wrap to make it have some wave in it. But my father was born during the Great Depression. And he had a scarcity mindset about money, understandably. So fear that there weren't enough jobs or food or resources to go around. And that creates financial anxiety. It creates a feeling of competition and a lack of peace and stability and security. And my dad, he was amazing. He pulled himself up by his bootstraps. He got his Harvard MBA. He became one of the youngest executives at General Motors. But when I was 8 years old, my father lost his job. And I didn't know that, but I remember going into my living room and he was home on a weekday and he was often traveling. And I said, Dad, it's so nice to have you at home. And he looked up at me and he was crying. And it was really scary. He was a big 6'2" kind of alpha male, and I hadn't seen him cry before. And I realized he had a lot of shame, a lot of anxiety about my older siblings that were in college. And he was unemployed for most of my adolescence during the automotive recession of the 1980s. So even though we lived in a nice home and things looked okay on the outside, there was a lot of stress, a lot of arguing between my parents about finances, a lot of shame. And I recreated that in my adult life. I believe as a therapist that we all unconsciously recreate what's familiar until we become aware and we choose something better. So I started my business with $500, $50,000 of student loans, and it grew tremendously, but I ended up in cash flow hell. The bigger my business got, the more money was outstanding in insurance, and I had difficulty making payroll and rent. I dealt with insomnia and panic attacks and tremendous shame and financial anxiety, where on the outside, it looked like I had this great company and all was well. On the inside, I was crumbling. I even lost my business partner because we were in such a state of struggle, and she left. So did many of our staff and clients. I thought I was going to have to file business bankruptcy. And that moment really taught me to practice humility and ask for help. Rather than telling my staff, you know what, I've got this, it's going to be okay, I said, I am so sorry and I need help. And help came out of the woodwork. Even my neighbor said to me, Joyce, you need a business valuation. He's a CPA. Actually, he's a CFO, and he recommended me to a CPA that he had worked with previously. And that CPA not only helped me turn my business around, he also helped me understand my psychology of money. He ran a business valuation. He said, Joyce, your business model works. You just truly have a cash flow problem, and I can help you with proper lending. He also helped me make my business to scale so that it was functioning healthier. And he confronted me. He said, Joyce, you are not running a charity to employ therapists. You deserve to make a profit. And I realized as a helping professional and as a caretaker and a people pleaser that I was taking care of everyone else before myself and was causing myself a lot of debt and a lot of stress. And so I had to work on my own psychology of money. And together with a ton of help from others, I was able to successfully sell my business 6 years after I met that CPA for a multi-million-dollar amount. And it was an 8-figure exit. So more money than I would have ever imagined. And I did that by looking at my psychology of money and practicing what I preach, doing my own financial therapy, and working on my business along with others. So there is an intrinsic relationship between mental health and financial health. And right now with the pandemic, we are living through a global mental health and financial health crisis. When we have financial stress or problems, it can trigger mental health issues like depression, anxiety, even financially triggered PTSD. So I think a lot of people think that PTSD is something that only war veterans experience or victims of horrible assault, but finances can also be traumatic. And the research says 23% of adults and 36% of millennials, younger adults, experience financial stress at levels that qualify for the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. And this is pre-pandemic data. So the pandemic has added fuel to the fire. And with the war in Ukraine and the gas prices and inflation, these are all financial traumas that we are living through that are affecting our businesses and ourselves personally, our households. These, on this slide, I want you to look at this and recognize that these are financial traumas. If you are a person of color, Black, Indigenous person of color, or you're a woman, or you're a member of the LGBTQIA+ population, you may have experienced racism, discrimination, or marginalization that affects you financially. That is traumatic. Poverty is a financial trauma. I worked with a client who grew up in the projects of Chicago, and she grew up without enough toiletries or even deodorant, toilet paper, and food. And as an adult, she, like my dad, she, really succeeded in her academics. She had a lot of drive, and she had a nice job as an executive assistant. And she was morbidly obese because of her financial trauma. She had grown up without, and she had such a fear that there wasn't going to be enough, that flow of money wasn't going to be consistent, that she overate. And she actually had gastric bypass surgery. And even though she lost the weight, she replaced that compulsive behavior with shopping and began to hoard toiletries until we worked on her underlying financial trauma in therapy. Other financial traumas include unemployment, divorce, a lawsuit. Healthcare expenses are, of course, one of the reasons that people have to file bankruptcy. It's one of the main reasons in our country. So really important to be compassionate and empathic, both for ourselves and for others in our lives, about how finances have impacted their mental health, our mental health. So financial distress accounts for more than 16% of suicides in the US, and it correlates with lower life satisfaction. So this is really very serious. I know in my community here on the North Shore of Chicago, we had a beloved CEO and father die by suicide because his business was failing. Years ago, I had a similar presentation of a client in his 50s who had lost everything. He had not told his wife and children. They lived in a huge fancy home, and he was having thoughts of suicide. So I had to really work with him on understanding that he is not his money. He is not his bank account. He is not his work title. He is that beautiful person within. And to be able to separate from ego, which is really connected to our financial identity. It's our mind's understanding of ourselves. And we need to recognize that internally, we are always worthy, whether the stock market crashes or we lose our job or whatever the situation might be, we are still the unique being and spirit within. So I said previously, we all unconsciously recreate what's familiar until we choose something better. I've had the blessing of working with individuals. I used to work in employee assistance programs across different industries. And it's interesting, you see different psychological profiles in different industries. So CFOs, I'm lovingly suggesting that you may like order and rules and boundaries, and you like things to make sense. And so, for example, having some obsessive compulsive tendencies is a really common profile for somebody in your line of work. That's a huge generalization, and OCD tendencies can be really a strength in many situations. But we want to ask ourselves, what patterns are we recreating in our work? Did you know that 80% of nurses are adult children of alcoholics? So they grew up as caretakers, and then they are unconsciously recreating that role in their profession. If you keep dating the same type of person, or you keep working for a psychopathic CEO like Jack's book, then what is it in you that you are unconsciously recreating, and how can you correct that? So my program is built on 12 mindsets that I identified that lead to holistic success. And when I say holistic success, I mean mental wellness, physical health, supportive relationships, work-life balance, and financial prosperity. Each chapter of my book is a different mindset that is empirically proven to promote both mental health and financial health. These include self-love, compassion, presence, awareness, vision. I can't read because I don't have my readers on, positivity, detachment, and more. So we're going to talk briefly about these today, but my book and my e-course have practical tools and exercises to help you work through these mindsets and build these skills so that you can feel better emotionally, relationally, psychologically, and financially. So I love the work of Bryant McGill. He said, long-lasting and pronounced success comes to those who renew their commitment to a mindset of abundance each and every day. So I mentioned my dad with the scarcity mindset from the Great Depression, and here in the pandemic, scarcity mindset is very common again. Think about the toilet paper thing, or people running to the gas stations to fill up because of fear that there aren't going to be enough resources. An abundant mindset is, and I'm seeing the thing here, I have not launched the first poll, but it is coming up. We have 4 polls today, so have no fear. They will be coming. You haven't missed them. An abundance mindset is the opposite of scarcity. It's the belief that there's more than enough resources for all of us and that we can collaborate rather than being competitive. And it is rooted in worth. An abundant mindset facilitates all of these characteristics on this slide. So I want you to be mindful of scarcity mindset in your thinking, in your work, and in your own personal finances. You might be find fantastic managing your organization's finances, but you may even have issues yourself personally because we're all human, right? So how can you cultivate an abundant mindset, and how can that help you be happier and more successful? This is me and my colleagues with the American Counseling Association teaming together and lobbying in DC for basically for our profession as a group. So lobbying for more funding for school counselors, for the elderly, for children, more resources available. I served on a task force when I was president of the Illinois Counseling Association, where we approached the insurance companies and asked for a raise for all mental health professionals in the state of Illinois. And people asked, why are you working with your colleagues? But we got a 17% pay increase from Blue Cross Blue Shield that resulted in, for me, it was more than $10,000 a month additional income. So collaborating rather than being competitive can really help you. I train private practitioners, and people always say, why are you creating competition for yourself? And I think differently. I believe in the abundance theory, that there's more than enough mental health issues in the world for all the therapists in the world, and it's better to have more people doing the same thing so that we can offer services to more clients. So the second mindset that I talk about, the first was abundance. The second is self-awareness. I love this quote from ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu. He said, "He who knows others is wise. He who knows himself is enlightened." So I'm asking you to look within, to look at yourself and your own beliefs about money. And is your unconscious somehow robbing you of riches? I mentioned how my people pleasing and my over caretaking was robbing me of prosperity in my business. We want you and your CEOs and the people that you work with to move from denial to awareness, from blame to responsibility, from passivity to action. These are moving into more financially conscious behaviors, being informed, being empowered. I had a client who came to me after working on the psychology of money, and she said, Joyce, I had an epiphany. I realized that my mother's beliefs about money is making me buy ugly shoes. And I laughed and I said, what are you talking about? And she said, my mom was so cheap. She drilled into us not to spend a lot of money on clothing or material possessions. And my 10-year-old daughter confronted me and she said, Mom, why do you have so many pairs of ugly shoes in your closet? Wouldn't it be better to just have a few pair of cute shoes? And my client realized it was her mother's belief systems that were shaping her spending patterns, and that actually she was spending more and feeling worse about herself by wearing things that she didn't actually like. So it's a silly example of how our family's belief systems can shape our financial reality. So I'm going to go ahead and launch our first poll, and I'm asking you, what is your money script? And I'm going to explain what each of these are. So money worship is the idea that money is going to bring you happiness. Money status is that money is going to give you self-worth. Money avoidance is when money makes us anxious and you stick your head in the sand. I definitely was money avoidant prior to working with my CPA. Money vigilance is when you are on it. You are organized. You are financially conscious. You communicate with your partner regularly. You communicate with your team at work regularly. You live within your budget. You understand your net worth. You are conscious and aware. So it looks like many of you have completed the poll. I'm going to give it another couple seconds because you do want to complete this if you want to get your CPEs. And I thought this was really interesting. I give this presentation across industries, and I gave it to a bunch of sales professionals at a technology sales company, and 80% of them said they had a money status money script, which I thought was really interesting because they're all working on their commissions and driven to earn more money in sales and to get, the nice car and the nice clothes. I thought how interesting that that happened by industry. Therapists are money avoidant. So what do you think you all are as CFOs? You are money vigilant. Yay, more than 60% of you are money vigilant. And the research shows that money vigilance is the only healthy, adaptable money script. So I appreciate your honesty if you recognized yourself in the first three, and that lets you know that you may have some stuff to work on in order to shift your mindset about money. So thank you for participating in that. So now we're talking about responsibility. I love this quote from Wayne Dyer. He said, everything you do is based on the choices you make. It's not your parents, your past relationships, your job, the economy, the weather, an argument, or your age that is to blame. You and only you are responsible for every decision and choice you make. I was telling my older sister, Paula, that I love the work of Wayne Dyer. And she said, I think he was my driver's ed teacher. And I said, no, he was not your driver's ed teacher, Paula. He was a world-renowned author and speaker. And to prove her wrong, I Googled Wayne Dyer, and he was, in fact, her driver's ed teacher. It was his first job out of graduate school, and he was a school counselor at her high school in Michigan, and apparently taught driver's ed. But I went on to read about Wayne Dyer, and he grew up in multiple foster homes and orphanages because his father was an alcoholic and his mother was not able to take care of he and his two siblings. So he was dealt a difficult hand. I believe in life we're each dealt a different hand of hardships and blessings or privileges. And sometimes it feels like life isn't fair in her dealings. But if we focus on blame, if we blame the government, our parents, our partners, our bosses, we are not going to move forward emotionally, personally, or financially. So I really believe success begins with an honoring of the past and how it's shaped and molded you. emotionally in your relationships? What are those themes and patterns that you are creating? And what of them are working for you, and which of them are no longer serving you, are causing self-limitation and self-sabotage, and taking responsibility for addressing those going forward. Now, as CFOs, you obviously are very financially literate, but unfortunately, when I do couples counseling, even with highly educated couples, the financial literacy is a big problem. Many people, even very smart and successful people, do not know the basics of financial literacy. And I see in couples that this can create sometimes a huge imbalance of power and control in the relationship. If one partner is very financially savvy and aware and the other partner is not. So I always encourage that we all promote our financial literacy so that we can be active agents in our partnerships and families and know what we're talking about when it comes to finances. So looking at your financial relationships, I would like you to think about how can you improve your communication. So thinking about that at work, in your partnership, in your family, do you have systems? Do you have obviously reports that you share? Are there more people that maybe need to have access to some of that information, some transparency that will help your organization? You also want to work on setting healthy financial boundaries with assertiveness. The research is showing a tremendous amount of young adults are still living at home and preventing their parents from retiring. And so how do we give our kids financial roots and wings? Financial infidelity is something that I see often in my practice. In a very serious way, I've seen unbelievably people have another partner and family that they're supporting financially. And obviously that's an enormous betrayal. I've seen people going through divorce and they have forensic accountants who are finding offshore accounts and things like that because there have been assets that have been hidden. And then on a silly note, one of my best friends who's married to my financial planner, he's tough. He's very strict with her on spending. So when she goes to the grocery store, she buys $100 Visa cards and it rings up like groceries. And then she uses those cards to buy herself mani-pedis and get new shoes and things like that. So kind of a funny example of financial infidelity, but we want to make sure that we have trust and communication and transparency in our financial relationships. Codependency is a term used traditionally in Alcoholics Anonymous. The codependent person is the person in a relationship with someone with a substance use, or I really think any other problem, whether it's depression or maybe a failure to launch type situation. And codependency is when the person takes too much responsibility for that other person. So I've had clients that I've worked with that have had a partner who doesn't work, who's kind of a freeloader, who has bad credit. And the one person is really overworking to enable that other person and allow them to underfunction. So we want to be mindful of codependency in our financial relationships. This financial health wheel is downloadable on your landing page that I shared with you. And it's a handout that you can complete. You can give it to others that you work with. And it's a self-assessment tool from my book where you can assess your financial health. Each spoke of the wheel is a different aspect of financial health. Like, are you budgeting? Are you treating yourself within your means? Are you meeting with your advisors and planners? Are you saving and investing? Are you negotiating? And if you're doing well in certain areas, you put a dot toward the outside of the wheel. If it's an area of deficit or needed attention for you, the dot goes more toward the center of the wheel. You connect the dots and then you notice your areas of needed improvement. Presence. For those of you who attended the mindfulness training, we talked a lot about getting rooted in the here and now. When I gave this presentation in DC, there was a woman who said, Joyce, honestly, I wasn't listening to you. I had my laptop open. Maybe some of you are doing that now. I was working on emails, and something you said made me look up and think, I need to listen to this woman. And she looked up, and this man that I have in the stock photo happened to be her grandson. So what are the odds of that? For her, she felt like that was like a God moment, or the universe telling her, lady, you got to listen to this. This is important stuff. So when we are present, when we practice mindfulness, we can make mindful decisions about money. We can have conscious and mindful spending, rather than buying things, after a couple glasses of wine on our Amazon account. We can tap into our intuition. You might have remembered me mentioning in the previous training that I use mindfulness to make important business decisions by checking in with the wisdom of my body and my gut, and noticing when I feel uncomfortable or I'm not trusting someone. And so spending mindfully and applying mindfulness to finance, if you're working on some reports, to get out of your head and into your body and notice how you feel, and begin to trust your gut, your deeper intuition about making business decisions. So there's also a way to apply mindfulness to finance in terms of pretending that your financial life is a person, and imagining how you treat that person. So when I was in my mid-30s, a young mom with my new company, my financial life would have been named Penny. I was abusive to her. I was neglectful. I didn't talk about her to anyone because I was ashamed of her. I expected a whole lot out of her. I racked up a ton of debt, and I didn't put a lot of nurturing into her. And she was basically on life support. As I went through my transformation personally and financially, I renamed my financial life Prosperity, and I recognized that she's a direct reflection of my self-worth. So you might want to think about this for yourself. My best friend Sherilyn said her financial life would be named Sally, that Sally's wildly impractical and tons of fun. She loves to decorate and travel and shop, but then she can't sleep at night. So she's working on saving her cash and paying her bills, and learning how to manage that compulsive part that's within Sally. I had someone at my one of my trainings said her financial life would be named Tightwad Teresa, and that she'd have a bun and glasses and a bad suit and ugly shoes. So I also want you to think about your ego and how your ego might be hurting you financially. I love the work of Eckhart Tolle. We talked about him in the mindfulness training. And he said, whenever you feel superior or inferior to someone, that is the ego.
Hi. In this video, I'm going to show you how Qigong body tapping can help.
I think somebody needs to mute.
In your body.
Something came up. Hopefully you can all still hear me. But I always say that healthy self-esteem is midway between diva and doormat. And dudes can be divas too. So the diva is entitled and grandiose and aggressive and can be an overspender. The doormat has low self-worth and may not be negotiating. They may be an under-earner. And healthy self-esteem is that healthy ego. And so I want to hear from you. What do you think your tendencies are? Do you think that you are more on the doormat continuum? Do you tend to not advocate for yourself financially? You don't speak up, you don't say no, you don't set financial limits. Maybe you work 100 hours for your job, you haven't had a raise or a bonus, even though the company is doing well. Or maybe you're a bit of a diva. I am a recovering doormat who has veered dangerously into diva, and I can be an overspender. So I check my diva by making sure that my financial planner hangs on to my cash so that I can't spend it. I've invested it, and I have my cash even with him so that I have to ask him for basically permission to spend, because that's how I can protect myself from myself. So thank you so much. It looks like most of you have responded. So I'm going to go ahead and share the results. Again, you all are a pretty healthy group because you work in finance. So it seems like a lot of healthy self-esteem with a couple doormats. So I definitely encourage you to work my program in the Kindle book. In the chapter on Essence, I have tips for how to rein in your inner diva or inner doormat and how to find that healthy balance of healthy self-esteem. So we want to recognize that our egos can be very dangerous in business. We all know that when someone is arrogant, it can be very off-putting in relationships, and relationships are the key to success. Imposter syndrome and perfectionism are aspects of ego that can prevent you from success. And so you want to look at how to move through that. And in my book, I have practical suggestions on how to get through that. And then really embracing your enoughness. Some people think that wanting more money is greedy or selfish or bad. And maybe you were taught that in your family of origin. But I really believe when we have more, we can help more. So again, we are not our money. We are not our bank account. That is how we are. It is not who we are. And our worth is always internal. And we are that. If you believe in mind, body, and spirit, we are the spirit. Our mind and our ego is not who we are, even though our mind would like us to believe that. So I always say that we are all beggars sitting on a golden bench. What do I mean by that? As I've worked with therapy clients across 25 years, I've had clients who have a business plan that they've never put into place. They have artwork that they've never shown anyone, a screenplay that they've written and never sent in, and they are not cashing in on their unique gifts and talents and ideas, their personal capital. And so what is your golden bench? What are you not seeing? What are your unique gifts and talents that you have not sort of manifested in the world to receive a financial return? When my business went into cash flow hell, my business partner had that scarcity mindset. And she looked at all the debt and all the bills, and she decided to leave. And after she left, I had the business valuation, and the CPA said, Joyce, your business is worth a 7-figure amount. So we were sitting on a golden bench without even realizing it. And she threw the baby out with the bathwater. So being mindful of the power of scarcity mindset and looking at what's wrong, or not having the courage to put yourself out there in a bigger, greater way. So I love this quote from Michelle Obama. She says, am I good enough? Yes, I am. So self-love, again, when you take care of yourself and your relationship with yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you treat yourself, that has a financial implication. So recognizing that if you care enough about yourself, you are going to welcome the life that you deserve. You've achieved a lot of success at this point, but maybe you have other dreams. I shared previously that I went through overwork and burnout, and I told you I was a recovering people pleaser, and it wasn't until I made an important shift in my life where I embraced my worth that my life began to change. So we have to shift from being our own inner critic or inner saboteur to really learning how to be our own good parent financially, best friend, and greatest advocate. So I want to hear from you. What do you think is causing you to have less financial prosperity than maybe what is available to you? So if you would go ahead and complete that poll. Some of you might recognize this wheel from our first presentation. This is a self-care wheel. Again, it's a handout that I encourage you to complete and recognize maybe some areas of needed improvement of how you can practice better self-care or self-love so that you feel better and there will be a financial return on that. Similarly, we talked previously about the importance of accessing support. I did not seek proper business and financial consultation out of fear. I was afraid someone would tell me that my business model didn't work and that I would have to file business bankruptcy. I also had ego, some pride that kept me from asking for help. That was detrimental to my business and to my finances. What keeps you from asking for more support? Is it, not wanting to be vulnerable? When we ask for help and support, some of us have been taught that that's a sign of weakness, when that's ridiculous. We are interdependent as human beings, and we all deserve and need support. It wasn't until I leaned into the support of my staff at Urban Balance that the whole business changed, and I felt so much more loved and supported. I'm grateful to all these individuals and many more who helped really save the company, and together we were stronger. So how can you collaborate with your teams to create more abundance in your organizations and also personally? So thank you for participating in the poll. Seems like a lot of you are recognizing scarcity mindset, some financial shame and anxiety, imposter syndrome, inner saboteur, and not being assertive. So there's always room for improvement, right? We're all works in progress. And I think with mental health, sometimes people think that you just go to therapy when you're dealing with a problem, but actually going to therapy can help you be better in all of these different ways, or working a program like I have can help you feel better and be more successful at work. Having a financial board of advisors for each person is something that I highly recommend. Not sure if you're aware, but there are 12-step support groups that are specific to finances. So if you have someone in your life who has a gambling problem, or a spending problem, or a debt problem, or an under-earning problem, there are free and anonymous meetings online where you can get support and help. There are financial therapists. I'm being interviewed by the New York Post today about financial therapy. So therapists like myself who are interested in the psychology of money and can help you work through your blocks, your barriers to prosperity. So looking again, we talked about this in presentation number 1. Are you accessing your support network? Are you asking for the help that you need and deserve, emotionally, financially, professionally? And how can nurturing your support network and asking people for help and support improve your mental well-being and financial well-being? This wheel exercise is new to this presentation. It is a workplace satisfaction wheel. I strongly encourage that you complete it, that you go to the landing page. You can complete it on Adobe, or you can print it out, and identify your areas of needed negotiation at work. What can you ask for so that you feel happier and more successful at work? Compassion. I was so happy that compassion is actually positively correlated with financial success. I had the honor of speaking with William Green, who is the author of Richer, Happier, Wiser. I always flip those around. It's some combination of those words. But he interviewed basically billionaires, the most wealthy people in the world. And he found that most of them had a real focus on philanthropy, and that when we have more, we can help more. So I don't believe that wanting financial prosperity is greedy or selfish. As my company did better, I was able to provide more jobs, more internships, give to charities, and even provide pro bono services. So yes, we're talking about money, but truthfully, I really believe that love is the true currency of life. And as we work on ourselves and our relationships and being lovingly connected with others, there is a financial return. In my coaching, I love to have people envision their greatest success. and provide them with exercises that are in your Kindle book and in my e-course to help you create a business plan, a work vision, a professional vision, or I'm sorry, personal vision for yourself, and how to cultivate work-life balance. So we want to have that vision. Otherwise, we're just on that hamster wheel of working and household responsibilities, and we're not consciously mapping out our path to move forward. We talked previously about how our thoughts precede our emotions. I'm going to share a little story with you. Several years ago, I was at a holiday party and my friend Randy said, "Joyce, how's your book coming along?" I've been working on this book for 10 years. It was rejected by many publishers. And I said, "Oh, Randy, I don't know. I'm not doing much with it. I just kind of put it on the back burner for now." And he said, "Oh man, you need to see my monk." And I said, "Your monk?" And he said, "Yeah, my Buddhist monk. And I believe I need all the help I can get. I'm open to it." So I made an appointment with Randy's monk. He was not the Tibetan monk I was expecting. He was a regular guy in black jeans and black t-shirt living in Highland Park, an affluent suburb of Chicago. And he just retired from his job from Accenture. And I realized I was speaking to one of the most brilliant people I had ever met. He was showing me diagrams he'd drawn about where science meets spirituality. And he said, "Tell me why you're here." And I told him why my book wasn't getting published and all the struggles I was having. And he listened for a while. And then he said, "I have your answer." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, the monk is going to solve my problems and help me get my book published." And he wrote something on a piece of paper and it said this. I was kind of mad. I was like, "Are you being serious right now?" And he said, "Absolutely. Weaken the fiction, all the excuses, all the rationalizations, all of this BS in your mind. You are in your own way." And so that was super helpful to me. So instead of having that negative narrative, I decided to refuse to believe that this was impossible for me to get my book published. I started acting as if and walking around and saying, "I am like my hero, Brené Brown, and I'm an international speaker and author." My best friend, who's a therapist, accused me of psychotic optimism. But it worked. I began to believe this. This is an Adlerian technique in psychology of acting as if. And I went to my agent and I said, "If I don't have a book deal in 3 months, I'm self-publishing." And she got me a publishing deal with the publisher of Brené Brown. So go figure. And I keep doing this. This was my book tour last year in New York City. Just kidding. This is me at Madame Tussauds because I had one event in New York City. I sold 3 books with William Green in the reading room. So I acted as if I was talking to my BFF RuPaul and on Oprah and Jimmy Fallon and getting some spiritual guidance from the Dalai Lama. So we need to shift our thinking instead of "I don't, I won't, I can't," to "I do, I will, I can." This is cognitive behavioral therapy. In my book, I have exercises to help you shift your thinking from negative to positive so that you can really impact your financial life. I also have practical tools and suggestions about negotiation. We're wrapping up here and I've got a few more slides, so hang in there with me and then I'll have your final poll and answer any questions that you have. To be successful in business, you have to have some healthy detachment. I remember I had tremendous financial anxiety when I had $50,000 of student loans and I put an additional $50,000 lien on my home. And my best friend Sherilyn said, "Joyce, would it help you if I told you that my husband Steve has 300 million in loans?" Can you freaking believe it? 300 million. He is an extremely successful commercial real estate person. And you have to have some risk tolerance in order to be successful in business. So we need to be able to kind of detach. Like if you've invested in the stock market and it's dipping now, you have to learn how to not emotionally get triggered so that you make a reactive choice instead of responding thoughtfully and riding that wave. So learning how to detach from negative emotions around money and really embrace the positive emotions, or be able to just at least be neutral. So I believe that in life, we are each given different challenges. I believe that the pandemic hopefully is something that is going to bring about some real blessings that challenges our opportunities for wisdom and growth. And that is what resilience is about. It's the ability to really move through challenges, bounce back, and persevere. So all of the skills that I've taught today and that I teach in my book and e-course will help you build mental and financial resilience. Again, working on these 12 mindsets for holistic success. So I want to hear from you. What are you going to do differently based on today? What are some of the things that you are going to work on? And as you're completing that, I'm going to share with you my own personal definition of success. This series has been called The Psychology of Success. I believe that success is to live openly, authentically, and lovingly in alignment with the highest good of ourself and others, and to the greatest extent possible. Not to live small, to have the courage to live large, live big, love hard, love big, and really work at expanding yourself in every possible way. I really believe that's what life is about. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results. And again, I'm going to share my contact information. If I always appreciate LinkedIn connections. I desperately need Instagram love. I welcome you to email me if you have any questions you weren't able to ask. But I love seeing the results of this. Lots of work on here of improving self-care, embracing worth, setting financial boundaries, and some people even going to work my program. So thank you so much. I'm very grateful to you all. I wish you all, tremendous success. And I am happy to answer any questions in the last minute that we have here.
Joyce, I've actually sent you a couple to the direct chat that were kind of, there's a lot of stuff going on. I didn't want to make you dig for them, but do you have access to that?
I do. Let me look.
I can go back and get them. Maybe I didn't do you any favors there.
Let me
Want me to read one out
Okay, here's
loud?
one. Do you have any suggestions or resources to help share these principles and knowledge with our children? I would recommend looking at my Psychology Today blog, because I have a bunch of things there, some articles. On my website, I have radio shows that I've done related to finances with children. And if you signed up for my email campaign, my next newsletter is on financial boundaries with children and basically how to teach them financial literacy. So more of that coming soon. When appropriate, for those of us who don't yet have a financial planner, what's a good way to find one that is a good fit? So there is a website, if you look up certified financial planners, that has a directory, but I recommend asking 3 friends and then interviewing 3 people, asking for an informational session about how they work, how their pricing works, what their style is, and finding a person that's right for you. I had somebody who's really kind of shaming as a way to try to sell me products. That didn't feel good. So making sure that you find someone that is a good fit. With the abundance concept, Stephen Covey, I love him. And Stephen M.R. Covey actually endorsed my book, which is super cool. And my book is actually just came out in Spain and Latin America, and it's coming out in China and Korea later this year. So that's exciting. I don't see any other questions. Somebody said, nice color on me. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for your time. And again, feel free to reach out if you have any other questions.
There was one question that came to me. I think the person was being funny, but they asked if you went golfing with the Dalai Lama.
I wish I did.
I believe that is a reference to the scene in Caddyshack with Bill Murray, but I'm not.
Yes, I wish I
100%.
did.
Uh,
I know. I had friends saying, oh yeah, the Dalai Lama in his apartment on the Upper East Side, because I was claiming I was
There you go.
visiting him in New York. So
I had one comment, because I don't know if you remember this, Joyce, but our second time you and I ever spoke, we talked a fair amount about our fathers, because
yes,
both of our fathers were, born shortly before the Great Depression. I think your dad was born in 29 or
yes,
something like that. They were born within a year of each other. And so, and my dad, was really cheap. And that made me, like, I spent until I was about 45, I was always nervous just because my dad was my idol. I was constantly terrified that I was going to be homeless. And, I actually had a second job well into my 40s, even though I was a CFO making pretty good money. I was just so nervous about it. But what's funny is my Uncle Don, who's 7 years younger than my dad, was the most carefree guy you could imagine. And they were raised by the same parents, but he has no recollection of the Great Depression. His earliest memories are like towards the end of World War II, which was a booming happy time. So, it's interesting how just going through something, and, none of us will probably ever go through anything like the Great Depression, but it's amazing how it not only impacted my dad, but, it impacted me as well. So.
yes, it is amazing. And how our families shape our emotional responses. And I've worked with people who were multimillionaires who wouldn't valet a car and would walk miles because of fear of somehow running out. And so money has flow, and it's about balance. Like, we should use our money to take care of ourselves and not have that fear that someday there's not going to be enough. It's about having that balance so that we can live a happy life.
Okay, fantastic. Well, there's a lot of love for you, Joyce, in the comments box. So hopefully
So
you've
nice.
had a chance to follow along with it. But, people genuinely appreciate what they've learned here today. And, we're a CFO group, right? Hardened finance people. So, this wasn't kind of the obvious thing to bring, but I'm really so glad we did that. All three of the sessions have been fantastic. And like I said, oops, you can't see me. I'm holding up the book, but that's not helping anyone. But Joyce's book is available on Amazon if you want the hardcover. If you're happy with the Kindle version, I have sent all of you a copy of it. About a third of you haven't claimed it yet. So, just a reminder to do so. Or if you feel like you haven't gotten it, just email me to jack@cfolc.com. And Joyce, I'll give you the last word.
Well, thank you all, and keep in touch. I hold you in my heart in a special place. This was a lot of fun, and maybe I'll be back someday with some more sessions.